How
Thank you.
how's work getting on? When did you start? Was it like this week or last week? When did you start?
Last week I started. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, beginning of last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 When did you officially kind of finish from work for the year? Was it like literally right up to the last moment, or did you have some time off?
Um, I took time off. Luckily, I took time off just in time to get COVID. So I got um I got COVID the week of the 13th of December, and
Hmm.
that was when I had booked in my break for Christmas. Theoretically, but in terms of client work, that's when I booked my break. But yeah, just in time to get ill.
Just in time. Yeah.
It's always the way.
It always
Um,
happens, but I'm just glad you're okay now, though. 'Cause
Thank you.
it's my pleasure. Because it's happened with a few people that I know. They finally take some work off work, and then they get ill. It's like you can't win, can you? Like take some time off to like recover and recuperate, and then you get ill. But but I'm just
Yeah,
glad you're okay now, though. But you must be packed. If you're saying how busy you are with work, though.
yeah, it's pretty full on. Um, it's always been full on, and I think it's like that for most other therapists I know. I think everyone, anytime I speak to other therapists, everyone is saying it's pretty busy. It always was, but I think with the pandemic, um, it's just that extra bit of tension, I think, trying, especially at the start of the pandemic, trying to rewrite the rules in a way and getting everybody online and setting everybody up. And of course, clients that can do that and the clients that couldn't do that. And really seeing that discrepancy right in the face. And like you're in Zoom, you're right in their living rooms. You see what's going on in their lives much more acutely than just hearing about it in a room, in a therapy room. So I think viscerally, the experience has been more stressful in that sense too. Just the amount of extra time and admin it's taken, and also more clients coming and working online as well. So there has been a slight increase of client work too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know exactly how you feel because me being a teacher as well, I was working in primary school for the whole of the pandemic until July, and I know exactly how you feel in terms of taking all your work from like a physical basis, face to face, to all online, and like
Yeah.
I know how stressful it can be. And I mean, something I ask all my guests is how they've been during the whole pandemic situation. So for you, how were you during the whole pandemic? Have you been okay, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, I've been mostly okay. I mean, aside from the fact that work was very stressful and taking up a lot of the energy that I was with. So I'd say that was very stressful. But in terms of personally, I was okay. I think it just I live on my own, so that brought up its own challenges. I think, at the very start of the pandemic, we weren't even allowed to be in support bubbles. So that was a bit strange, actually, kind of not seeing anybody at all, couldn't hug anyone. But actually, since I got quite used to it quite quickly, and then I realized actually having this, I just needed that space because I was so busy. I didn't have much time to think of anything else, and I was doing a lot of writing as well, and I was doing some coursework bits as well for other things that I was training in. And I just thought, you know what, I don't have even time to breathe. So actually being on my own in some ways was a bit of a blessing, because if I had people to look after or other people with me, I think that would have been quite stressful probably. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've been all right.
No, thank God for that. I mean, I can know that everyone's situation was completely different. Some like yourself were alone or with family or friends. I mean, are you
Yeah.
someone that's able to adapt quite quickly to any situation, do you feel as well?
I think so. Yeah. Do you mean has the pandemic helped me do that, or do you mean
In
was I already able
in
to?
general, because I was going to ask as well as part of that as well. You've been a therapist for years now, over 7 years, if I'm correct, as well. And do you
Yeah.
feel like what you've learned as a therapist before and during your time as a therapist has kind of helped you in a way to deal with potential loneliness or not being able to hug anyone or just see anyone face to face? I mean, has your training helped you in a way?
I think so. I think probably I was all right with it anyway, but I would say what the training did and the work does is that it helps keep you quite boundaried, because it helps you to bear emotions quite, quite strong, big emotions, but it helps you to contain them in a slightly different way, and to trust in them a bit, and knowing that they don't, things do pass if you accept them, but also putting time boundaries on things, factoring rest, valuing the body as well, paying attention to things, being aware of what I'm feeling from moment to moment, and really allowing it in. And what was quite common, as an example, I'm just thinking on the hoof here a bit, but at the start of the pandemic, a lot of people would say things like, oh, I can't complain, I don't have it as bad as anyone else. So many people would say things like that, and obviously I understand where that has come from. I think as a nation, especially in the UK, I think we are quite conditioned to always be grateful for things, not complain. If someone says, how are you, it's very easy to go, I'm fine, and not complain, because there's always someone worse off than us. And actually, I think that therapy work has helped me to actually tell myself, even if I don't tell someone else, but not to trick myself, and not to tell myself, oh, other people have it worse. Yeah, other people do have it worse, and I have my situation too. And if I want to be pissed off about it, or upset or sad, I will be, and I can do that. And I think maybe that's where the therapy training has helped.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, did it take you quite a while to get to that position of being able to talk to anyone about what you might be going through, or talking to yourself, or did it come quite naturally to you? I know a lot of people do find talking. Sorry to interrupt the story. I know that a lot of people do, like you said, they just get on with things, they don't complain and so forth. But yeah, at the same time, a lot of people do complain. Not complain. Sorry, they do find it hard to maybe tell someone about what they might be going through, whether they with it mentally or whatever it might be. So for you, was it quite an easy thing to talk to people about what you might be going through, or did you, even you as a therapist, find it quite hard to open up to someone about what you might be going through?
Mm. That's a good question, because I think what happens then is there's also the boundary of the professional boundary, not obviously not at all telling my clients what's going on for me, but also being human enough to let them in slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So things like, if I'm tired or stressed, I might be able to share that, in terms of how I'm feeling emotionally. But I think maybe what I would hold back on from a professional point of view is more, the details of what's going on in my life. And I think I would say that probably extends to other people as well. I think maybe I have a tendency to say things like, oh God, like today's, I'm knackered, or I've got a lot on, but I won't necessarily go into the detail of what's happening. And I think I've always been like that personally. I think I've always been quite private, but I think that maybe aligns with the confidentiality policies of therapy too, if
Mm.
I think about it, because there's a bit of a contradiction in therapy about opening up, but also being discreet. I think as a therapist, I'm quite used to sharing a lot with my clients, encouraging them to share with me is what I mean,
Mm.
and being open to receiving everything that they're telling me, whilst holding on to that information and not sharing it elsewhere. So I can cut that off quite well. And I think I've always been like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was thinking that it must be quite difficult for you to take on so much from so many different clients or patients who do come to you for your help. I mean, is there one within your industry that even you could talk to, just in case it does get a bit overwhelming with so many clients or patients, thinking it's causing me quite a lot of stress now, I need to kind of offload it anyway to someone else? So is there someone in your field where you might be a bit more senior than if just in case, or someone else you can talk to just in case?
Yeah, so it's a very it's a very official and a thing that happens in the therapy profession.
Mm.
Most therapists will have a clinical supervisor. So if you belong to a professional professional body, which any legitimate therapist really most do. Not everyone does, but anyone that belongs to, say, the UKCP or the BACP, which are the two principal counselling and psychotherapy bodies. There's others, but I won't go into them just yet. You might ask me that later. But one of the requirements is that you, I think it's something like for every 6 clients, for every 6 hours, you see a clinical supervisor, where you go through your caseload, and that can be anything from just talking through some sticking points that are coming up in the work. Maybe there's a client that's bringing material that's triggering your own stuff, and you want to sort of talk through how can I avoid that spilling into the work so that I maintain the professional boundaries. It could be anything like that, all the way to I myself aren't coping well today. I'm tired, and it can be anything like that, but it's there as a support. So absolutely, yeah. And most therapists have that. Yeah.
How did you find that transition from going from face to face and in a maybe in a room with people to more online? Because I heard a lot of people find it quite difficult in the sense that they can't always. I've spoken to various different therapists from different fields, and although they found it all right in the end, a lot of people found it quite difficult because, as you could notice, obviously it's just from shoulders and above, and they can't always see body language or can't always tell about facial features. So how did you find it going from face to face to more online? Was it quite difficult for you, or was it okay in the end?
Um, what I would say, and probably what a lot of people don't realize, is how much work went into making that transition as an industry on the whole.
Mm,
There was so much consultation as soon as the pandemic hit, and as soon as the mandate came that we couldn't work face to face. The whole profession came together in such a cohesive, beautiful way, actually,
mm,
with so much support and information about how to make that transition. There was a lot of training that we all had to undertake, not just in terms of how to use things like Zoom, but actually the ethics of working online. So things like confidentiality, how that shifts, when someone's on Skype, for example, if you've had a call, your name stays on the Skype. So if someone's in a situation of domestic violence or abuse, not only are you now in a situation where their possibility to have therapy is more compromised because they're at home and maybe not safe,
mm,
you've got to factor in that the fact they're having therapy, it needs to remain confidential. So how can you do that in a way that they're not going to be put in danger? So things like working on platforms like Zoom, or there's another platform called Doxy, where there's no footprint left behind.
mm.
You switch off, there's no indication that you had a session. Little things like that I guess you don't take into account. You kind of just take those things for granted, but there was a lot of training on that, and things like how to make payments in a way that people are secure online, not at risk of viruses. And another thing, a huge thing, was about things like Amazon and Echo, like
Mm.
people, Amazon Echo and Alexa.
Yeah.
So a lot of clients would have those on in the background. So you'd have to factor in things like before anything, like having a confidentiality agreement, sort of saying switch off all phones, all Alexas, because if your Alexa's on whilst you're having a therapy session, then you're going to start getting adverts popping up on your Facebook about the things you're
Yeah.
talking. So it actually
Wow.
quite complex, and so I would say, like, that side of things took a bit of getting your head around the new challenges that working online brings. And although things were lost, like, yes, the face-to-face physical proximity was lost. As you said, with your therapist that they said that you can only see from the shoulders upwards. So things like that were lost. I think even things like smell and you know jewelry that they might often wear, that you can hear, that the sense of them changes. But one thing that actually improved, I would say, or added a layer, is that you are right in their context.
Mm.
So, for example, so many people had to work from home and were homeschooling. All of a sudden, I was placed and confronted with families where there were children screaming in the background, where you could hear people in the next room, or the sound of traffic going by, um, and the way that they were living. And so if people were living in close proximity or close quarters to a spouse, how do they talk about their spouse if the spouse is just in another room?
Mm.
So it brought with it these challenges, but insights that brought up things that might never have come up if you were just in the room, face to face. So I wouldn't say it was. I wouldn't say it was a detriment. I would say it was a different experience that added a lot of dimensions and took away some others into something that was, this word unprecedented that we all
Yeah,
use.
of
But it
course.
really was. It was, and it was an eye opener. And I think I forget now because I'm so used to it. I almost forget what the things were. But at the time, it was a real wow. This is different. It's changed the work dramatically.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, were you dealing with patients before and during COVID as well? Like, so you went face to face to online as well?
I did. There was one or two people I would see online at that point, and that
Mm.
was only circumstantial. Either they were abroad or they were. So, for example, if someone's just had a baby, they physically can't get to the the place where they would normally have therapy because they're breastfeeding or something like that. That would be a scenario where beforehand I might have seen them online, but it wasn't the norm.
Mm.
No.
I was talking to a good friend of mine, Michelle Ackley, who's a TV presenter, and she actually mentioned, which another thing that we didn't quite think about is people who are talking from their own houses sometimes are more comfortable in talking to people. I mean, did you notice that with some people that maybe they were more comfortable being in their own surroundings with things that they know about? I mean, did you notice that with certain people that they might feel a bit more comfortable talking to you in an area they felt more comfortable in, if that makes sense?
There's something called the disinhibition effect,
Mm.
and you already know about it. So,
Yeah.
so I think when you're on screen anyway, you're more likely to open up and share, and that was definitely the case. And I think what I was maybe finding is if someone had an initial session, a first session with me online, they were more liable to say things more quickly than what they might have done in person. I think people were, I don't know if that's the same thing as feeling more comfortable, but I think the scenario led itself to people maybe oversharing. Oversharing maybe sounds negative, sharing more than they would have done. And I think I can speak for myself too, in that me being in my surroundings too, I guess you're closer to your home comfort. So you can have a cup of tea with you, you can I don't know, you can have a blanket round you, you can sit in a chair you might want to. So I think I, I did notice that with people that maybe they would be more relaxed in that sense. But I would equally say the opposite too for some. If they were in a living situation that was not very safe for them, um, or that they didn't like being in, that was quite inhibiting for
Mm.
them as well. So
Mm.
there was quite a lot of hushed tones, I think, at one point. People couldn't quite say what they wanted to, just in case someone next door could hear, things like that.
Mm.
Yeah.